Does your lower back start to ache after just 20, maybe 30 minutes of sitting? At first, it's that dull stiffness right above your belt line. You shift a little in your chair, maybe cross one leg over the other, lean to the side. It helps for about a minute. Then the ache creeps back in, a heavy pressure that seems to settle deep into your spine. By the time you stand up, it feels like your lower back is rusted shut. You do that awkward little two-step shuffle. Maybe place a hand on your hip and gently arch backward, waiting for the pain to pop out. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it stays. And then you think, great, I'm getting old. Or maybe it's because I sit too much. Or maybe my back is just weak. Sound familiar? If it does, you are absolutely not alone. In fact, more than 80% of adults will experience significant lower back pain from sitting at some point in their lives. And it's happening younger and younger. People in their late 20s and early 30s are now reporting chronic back aches that used to only show up in people twice their age. But here's the crazy part. Most people think it's because their back muscles are weak or they just have bad posture. So they start doing random stretches they found on Instagram, or they buy an expensive office chair hoping that'll fix it. But the real problem? It's usually not your back muscles that are weak. It's not just getting older, and your fancy ergonomic chair probably isn't saving you. There's actually a hidden, sneaky chain reaction that happens inside your body every single time you sit down, and it sets up your lower back to fail. Even if you have a strong core, even if you sit up perfectly straight, and even if you exercise every day. Why does this matter so much? Because if you don't address this specific mechanism, you'll keep fighting the same battle for years. Your back pain will flare up every time you drive long distances, work late at your laptop, or sit through a movie. And slowly, those small episodes of pain will stack up, eroding the health of your spinal discs and the nerves they're supposed to protect. So by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly why sitting hurts your lower back, how to stop feeding the cycle, and a simple technique you can do in just 30 seconds right at your desk that decompresses your spine and resets the muscles that should be supporting you. The silent test. Are you already in trouble? Let me give you a quick test right now to see how vulnerable your back really is. Sit normally in your chair, however you typically sit. Now put one hand flat on your lower back. Try to slouch slightly, then straighten up. Can you actually feel the curve of your lower back moving, or is it just lock stiff? Try to breathe deeply into your belly. Does your lower back expand at all, or is it locked like a board? Most people are shocked to realize that their lower back is already so stuck and compressed it barely moves at all. Even when you try to sit taller, it's often your mid-back or shoulders that straighten, not your lumbar spine. That's why so many people say, I keep trying to sit with good posture, but my back still hurts. It's because the damage is already in progress. You've trained your lower spine to get stuck in a slightly flexed, compressed position. And every time you sit, you're compounding it. The weird reason you don't notice it right away. You might be thinking, but if sitting is so bad, why doesn't it hurt immediately? Great question. It's because your spine actually has very few pain receptors inside the discs themselves. Most of your discs are like rubber gaskets between your vertebrae. They can start bulging, dehydrating, and wearing down long before you feel any actual pain. The first thing that usually complains isn't the disc. It's the surrounding ligaments and small muscles, or even the nerves once they get a bit pinched. By the time your lower back feels stiff and achy after sitting, it's a sign the discs have already been under abnormal pressure for months or years. So that annoying stiffness after sitting, it's not just stiffness. It's an early warning signal that your spinal structures are being overloaded in a way that could eventually cause a disc bulge or nerve irritation. The hidden time bomb in sitting. Even if you're good at posture, you might say, but I always try to sit up straight. Perfect. Except sitting upright for long periods isn't much safer. Why? Because even perfect upright sitting still means your lumbar spine is under a constant load, with zero muscular dynamic support. When you stand, your glutes, core, diaphragm, and multifidus are subtly working together to keep your spine stable. When you sit, your glutes turn off, your psoas gets short and tight, and your deep spinal stabilizers effectively go to sleep. This means that whether you're slumped forward or bolt upright your fancy ergonomic chair, your lower back is basically being held up by passive tissues alone, your discs and ligaments. And the longer you sit, the more those tissues slowly deform, leading to microscopic damage that adds up. Here's why you have to care. Even if you're young and fit, lower back pain from sitting doesn't care if you're an athlete. In fact, some of the most common patients spine specialists see are competitive lifters or runners who work an office job by day. Their story goes like this. My lower back was always a little stiff from sitting all day, but it was fine after I warmed up at the gym. Then suddenly one day after tying their shoe or sneezing, bam, sharp, shooting pain, sometimes radiating into the leg. What happened? The cumulative damage finally surpassed the tissue threshold, and the disc that's been slowly deforming for years finally gave way. That's why addressing sitting-related lower back stress right now is critical. Not when your back finally blows out. The promise of this video: fix it fast. By the end of this series, you'll understand not just why sitting hurts your back, but how to fix it immediately with a simple reset you can do right at your desk that takes under a minute. You'll also learn how to tweak your sitting pattern so your spine is under less stress without needing fancy chairs or lumbar pillows. In the next section, we'll dive into exactly what happens inside your spine every minute you sit, the sneaky chain reaction from your hips to your discs, and why your back feels tight when actually it's your disc silently deforming. Stay tuned, because what you'll learn next might be the most important piece of your long-term back health you ever hear. Part 2, what sitting really does to your lower back. So now, let's pull back the curtain and look inside your body to see exactly what's happening in your lower back when you sit. Because the truth is, most people have no idea what's going on beneath the surface. They think back pain from sitting comes from bad posture or tight muscles, and they spend years stretching hamstrings, doing yoga twists, or buying fancy ergonomic chairs, none of which actually fix the real mechanical problem. Once you see the chain reaction of what sitting does to your spine, from your hips all the way to your discs, it'll be obvious why that dull ache shows up, why it builds up throughout your workday, and why your back eventually starts failing under even simple loads. 1. Sitting shuts down the muscles that protect your spine. Let's start at the hips. When you sit down, your glutes, the biggest, strongest muscles in your body, literally shut off. They're not doing anything. Their entire function is to stabilize your pelvis and assist your lower back in holding up your upper body. But when you're parked on a chair, your glutes are basically on vacation. Now, with your glutes disengaged, the entire responsibility for maintaining your pelvis and lumbar spine alignment falls on your deep core stabilizers. That's your transverse abdominis, the corset-like muscle that wraps your waist, and your multifidus, tiny muscles that run up the spine itself. Trouble is, these stabilizers also decrease in activity when you're seated. There's no dynamic demand, so they downregulate. They're effectively asleep. That means the job of supporting your upper body now defaults to your passive structures, your lumbar discs, your spinal ligaments, and the bony facets. They're bearing the static load. And unlike muscles, which can contract and share loads dynamically, your passive tissues just take the force, deforming ever so slightly to accommodate the weight. 2. How sitting subtly crushes your spinal discs. Inside your lumbar spine, between each vertebra, is a disc, a jelly-like cushion called the nucleus pulposus surrounded by tough collagen fibers called the annulus fibrosus. When you stand or walk, pressure moves evenly through these discs. Movement actually helps pump nutrients in and waste out, keeping discs healthy. But sitting is different, especially if you sit with even a slight rounded back. Your pelvis tips backward, posterior pelvic tilt, and your lumbar curve flattens or reverses. This shifts the compressive forces toward the front anterior portion of your discs. That's important because it means the gel-like center gets squeezed backward, pushing against the fibers of the annulus at the rear. Over hours and days, this repeated backward push stretches the posterior fibers. They start to develop tiny micro-tears. Not enough to rupture, at least not yet, but small enough to weaken the structural integrity of the disc. You won't feel this happening. Discs have very few direct pain receptors. They can be slowly degenerating for years before any nerve even picks it up. That's why your back might feel totally fine while sitting, until you stand up and suddenly there's a pinch, or worse, a sharp zap. 3. Sitting shortens your hip flexors, feeding the vicious cycle. Meanwhile, your hip flexors, especially the psoas muscle, are stuck in a shortened position the entire time you're seated. Remember, your psoas runs from your lumbar spine directly to the top of your thigh. When it's constantly held short, it starts to adaptively tighten. So later, when you stand up, that tight psoas pulls on your lumbar vertebrae, increasing the forward tilt of your spine and adding more pressure to the already stressed discs. Even worse, because your glutes are underactivated, they're not counteracting this anterior pull. Your pelvis ends up slightly out of alignment, making your low back work overtime to maintain your upright posture. It's a biomechanical disaster perfectly engineered by your office chair. For why good posture while sitting often isn't enough? Some people proudly tell me, but I always sit up straight. I keep my shoulders back. I have great posture. That's better than slumping, but it's still not enough. Why? Because even with a perfectly upright spine, you're still putting static load on your discs. Think of it like holding a bowling ball at arm's length. Even if your arm is perfectly aligned, the muscles still fatigue over time, and the passive structures eventually strain. When you're seated upright, without any dynamic movement, the small muscles that support your spine fatigue quickly. They're not designed to hold static positions for hours. As they fatigue, tiny shifts start happening. Your pelvis rolls back slightly. Your lumbar curve flattens. The discs again get uneven pressure, compressing anteriorly and bulging slightly backward. It's why after 20 to 30 minutes, even in a perfect posture, you feel an urge to fidget. That's your nervous system trying to unload stressed tissues. It's also why no ergonomic chair, no matter how fancy, ever completely fixes sitting-related back pain. 5. The final insult. Ligaments stretch, joints stiffen, nerves become sensitized. When you sit for long periods, your spinal ligaments, especially the ligamentum flavum and the posterior longitudinal ligament, start to stretch under sustained load. They're like rubber bands that are meant to briefly elongate, not stay stretched for hours. Over time, this leads to a loss of elastic recoil. Your spine becomes slightly more unstable. Meanwhile, your facet joints, the small joints at the back of your spine, stiffen from lack of movement. Synovial fluid isn't pumped in and out. The capsules become sticky. So when you finally do stand and move, it's not smooth and lubricated. It's creaky and vulnerable to sudden jolts. Lastly, prolonged mechanical stress changes your nervous system sensitivity. Tiny nerve endings around your discs and joints start to fire more easily. You begin noticing aches sooner. Movements that once were painless now cause discomfort. This is called peripheral sensitization, and it's why people with long-term sitting habits develop lower pain thresholds. 6. Why standing up often feels worse at first. Ever notice that the first few seconds after you stand up from a long sit are actually the most painful? That's because your discs have been deforming under uneven pressure. When you stand, gravity shifts and tries to recenter the gel in your discs. But the annulus fibers are temporarily stretched or even slightly creased. This sudden redistribution can pinch sensitive outer layers, creating that initial stab. It usually settles after a few steps, but repeated cycles of this cause micro-injuries to become micro-tears, which later become bulges. 7. The big takeaway. The entire time you're sitting, even if you're doing it right, you're placing static, uneven loads on your lumbar discs. You're shortening your hip flexors, switching off your glutes, tiring out small stabilizers, stretching passive ligaments, stiffening your facet joints, and gradually sensitizing your nerves. This is why lower back pain from sitting is not about being out of shape or simply having bad posture. It's about a predictable, measurable mechanical process that's silently working on your spine every hour you spend in a chair. Up next, how to fix it in 30 seconds right at your desk. Now that you understand the chain reaction, from muscle shutdown to ligament creep to disc deformation, you can stop wasting time on generic fixes. In Part 3, we'll break down the number one mistake people make when trying to stretch out after sitting, why it actually increases disc stress, and then we'll give you a simple 30-second decompression Reset you can do multiple times a day to literally pull pressure off your discs and keep your spine young. Stick around. It could save you from years of unnecessary pain. Part 3. The big mistake most people make after sitting and the real 30-second fix. All right, so now you understand why sitting is basically a perfect storm for your lower back. Your glutes shut off, your hip flexors tighten, your discs get squished unevenly, your spinal ligaments stretch out, your small joint capsules stiffen, and your nerves become jumpy. It's like a slow-cooking recipe for back problems. So what do most people do when they finally stand up and feel that tight, heavy, stiff ache in their lumbar spine? They do exactly what feels instinctively right, and also exactly what often makes it worse. 1. The classic mistake: stretching the wrong way at the wrong time. Think about it. You just stood up from sitting at your computer for 90 minutes. Your back feels stiff. So you do what everybody does. You bend forward, maybe even reach for your toes, hoping to stretch out the stiffness. And it feels kind of good. There's that slight pull through your hamstrings. The skin on your lower back stretches. Maybe it even gives you a tiny crack. Feels like relief for a second. But inside your spine, it's a disaster. Why? Because after sitting, your discs are already loaded posteriorly. Remember, when you sit, the fluid center of your discs, the nucleus pulposus, is being pressed backward against the rear fibers of your annulus. Those fibers are already under tension. When you then bend forward, you add even more compression to the front of the disc, forcing the nucleus to push harder backward into fibers that are already stressed. Over time, this repetitive load plus stretch and flexion is how micro tears in the annulus accumulate, eventually forming disc bulges or small herniations that press on spinal nerves. Dr. Stuart McGill, the world-renowned spine researcher, says, repeated flexion is the exact motion that causes most disc bulges. It's like bending a credit card over and over. The first hundreds of times, nothing happens. Then suddenly it fails. And ironically, we bend forward the most right when our discs are already most deformed, after prolonged sitting. That's why so many people throw out their backs after rising from a chair and bending over to pick up a pen, tie a shoe, or lift a grocery bag. It's the culmination of thousands of little bends on a vulnerable disc, finally breaching the limit. 2. Why it feels good temporarily, but worsens things long-term. Here's the trap. When you bend forward after sitting, it often feels nice in the moment. That's because you're stretching tight posterior muscles like your erectors and maybe getting a slight neural glide of your sciatic nerve. But that temporary stretch also gives the nucleus of your discs more room to move backward, exactly where they're not supposed to go. It's why you often feel better for 30 seconds, then stiffer or slightly sore 10 minutes later. You're feeding the problem while chasing short-term relief. It's the same paradox people run into with static hamstring stretches for back pain. Those stretches pull on the pelvis, flattening lumbar lordosis even more, increasing posterior disc pressure. So sure, your hamstrings feel looser, but your disc integrity quietly suffers. 3. The true priority after sitting: decompression, not more flexion. The real fix after sitting isn't a fold forward. It's to reset the pressure inside your discs by gently decompressing your spine and activating the muscles that should have been supporting you all along. This takes tension off the overstressed ligaments and annulus fibers, helps the nucleus normalize toward the center of the disc, and wakes up the stabilizers so they can take over the load from your passive tissues. For the 30-second desk reset that actually unloads your spine, you don't need special equipment. You don't need to get on the floor or do some awkward office yoga. Here's a simple protocol you can do right at your desk multiple times a day. The quick step-by-step. 1. Scoot forward to the edge of your chair. Place feet flat on the floor, hip width apart. Let your knees form a roughly 90-degree angle. 2. Place hands on the tops of your thighs. Sit tall, imagining a string pulling the top of your head toward the ceiling. 3. Gently hinge forward at your hips, not your lower back. Keep your spine neutral. The motion is a tiny, stick your butt back, not a slump. You should feel your pelvis rotate slightly, with your low back staying straight. 4. Lightly tighten your glutes and pull your belly button slightly inward. This low-level engagement switches on your stabilizers. Think 20% effort, just enough to brace, not to squeeze hard. 5. Take 3 slow belly breaths. Inhale for 4 seconds. Fill your belly. Exhale for 6 to 7 seconds, gently drawing belly and more at the end. As you exhale, think about your spine elongating and pressure equalizing inside your discs. 6. Return upright by pushing through your legs. Do this instead of just letting your back do the work. Feel the glutes lightly contract as you come back up. Repeat this 2 to 3 times in a row, every hour or so. It takes about 30 seconds, but it does 3 critical things. Helps decompress your lumbar discs. Reactivates your hip and core stabilizers. Reduces the creep, the slow stretching of your spinal ligaments and capsules. 5. Why this works so quickly. It's simple spinal mechanics. When you stay seated for long stretches, pressure inside the disc deforms a nucleus slightly backward. This tiny hip hinge maneuver plus controlled breathing gently recenters the nucleus, balances out internal pressure, and reduces the strain on the already taut posterior annulus. Meanwhile, by squeezing your glutes even a little and tightening your belly, you engage the muscles that are supposed to hold you up. It literally offloads stress from your discs and ligaments back onto active muscle, exactly where it belongs. It's why patients who start doing this throughout their workday report that by evening, their typical back lockup never arrives. 6. Bonus. How to stand up without feeding the problem. Most people, after sitting, just lean forward and let their low back do all the work to get them upright. That's a recipe for continuing disc pressure and repeated flexion loading. Instead, do this. Slide to the edge of the chair. Keep spine tall, chest slightly lifted. Lean forward with your hips so your nose is over your toes. Push through your feet and engage glutes as you rise. This uses your legs and hips to drive the motion, sparing your lumbar spine. 7. Where we're going next. So now you know the big mistake. Bending or stretching your lower back immediately after sitting is not the answer. The real key is gentle decompression plus muscle reactivation. It's simple, it's fast, and you can do it without anyone at your office even noticing. In the next section, we'll give you a mini blueprint to structure your entire day, how to sit smarter when take micro breaks, and simple hydration and anti-inflammatory hacks that keep your discs healthy long-term. Stick around, because protecting your back doesn't have to mean giving up your job or living in fear chairs. It just takes a smarter strategy. And you're already miles ahead by being here. Part 4. The all-day blueprint to fix lower back pain from sitting. All right, you've made it to the final piece, and honestly, this is where the magic happens. You've learned why sitting crushes your discs, turns off your glutes, shortens your hip flexors, stretches your spinal ligaments, and quietly weakens your back over time. You've also learned the biggest mistake most people make, bending or stretching forward after sitting, and the real 30-second reset that decompresses your spine and re-engages your stabilizers. But here's the truth. Lasting relief and bulletproofing your lower back isn't about a single stretch or fix. It's about building a simple, sustainable all-day blueprint that you can run on autopilot, so your spine is constantly protected, your discs stay healthier for years, and your nerves don't get sensitized to every little positional stress. That's exactly what we're going to create for you right now. 1. The hydration principle. Your discs literally depend on it. Here's something most people don't realize. Your spinal discs don't have a direct blood supply. They rely on a slow process of fluid diffusion from the vertebral end plates. This means they're basically like tiny sponges that rely on mechanical pumping plus available water to stay hydrated. When you're dehydrated, your discs are the first to suffer. Less fluid means poorer shock absorption, more micro tears under stress, and accelerated degeneration. Blueprint step. Aim for 2.5 to 3 liters, 85 to 100 ounces of water daily. More if you live in hot climates or are physically active. Add a pinch of natural salt or electrolytes to 1 glass to help your body actually retain the water instead of peeing out immediately. Drink a large glass, 300 to 400 milliliters, within 30 minutes of waking up. Overnight, your body loses water through breathing and urine. Your discs need that first hydration hit. 2. The sitting rule, 20-8-2 microcycle. Forget the outdated sit up straight and stay there, or buy a $1,000 chair. What your spine truly craves is movement variety and breaks from static loads. The best system found in recent ergonomic research is the 20-8-2 cycle. 20 minutes sitting with good hip-supported posture. 8 minutes standing at a high table or do quick tasks around the office/home. 2 minutes moving, walking around the room, stretching arms overhead, or doing your desk reset. This small rhythm drastically cuts the time your discs spend under static deformation. It also prevents creep, that slow ligament stretching that leads to instability, and pumps nutrient-rich fluid through your discs. If you're in meetings and can't stand, simply do a minute of seated hip rocks. Keep feet flat. Gently arch and flatten your lower back, letting your pelvis rock forward and backward. This maintains gentle fluid shifts inside your discs. 3. The hip flexor fix. Combat chair-induced shortening. Remember how sitting keeps your psoas short? That means every time you stand up after hours seated, it tugs on your lumbar vertebrae, increasing anterior shear and compressive force on your discs. Combat this with a 60-second standing hip flexor stretch. Stand with one foot forward, one back in a small lunge. Tuck your tailbone slightly under posterior pelvic tilt. Shift weight forward until you feel a stretch at the front of your rear hip. Hold for 30 seconds each side. Do this at least twice daily. It's an absolute game changer for lumbar decompression. It unloads your spine and restores normal pelvic mechanics. For the glute wake-up, your lumbar bodyguards. Your glutes are your spine's best friends. When they're strong and firing, they keep your pelvis level, reduce shear on your lower discs, and offload your multifidus from working overtime. But when you sit, glutes switch off. Over years, they lose neural drive. Your brain literally forgets to use them. Here's a quick glute reset you can do every hour. Stand up, place hands on a counter or desk lightly for balance. Feet shoulder width apart. Squeeze your glutes as hard as possible for 5 seconds, then release. Repeat 5 times. That's it. These microactivations prime your neural circuits to keep glutes online. You'll notice within days that your standing posture naturally feels taller and your low back less loaded. 5. The golden decompression flow for the evening. By day's end, your discs have lost a bit of height. That's normal daily fluid cycling. To give them the best chance at overnight rehydration and waking up without stiffness, spend 2 to 3 minutes on the floor each evening. Try this gentle 90 to 90 decompression pose. Lie on your back near a couch or chair. Place your calves on the seat so hips and knees are at 90 degrees. Place hands on your belly. Breathe slow diaphragmatic breaths. Stay here for 2 to 3 minutes, letting your spine fully relax. This position unloads your lumbar spine almost completely, letting discs naturally draw in fluid. It also soothes your nervous system, reducing hypersensitive pain signaling. 6. The anti-inflammatory layer. Small daily choices, huge impact. Your spine isn't just mechanical, it's biological. If your body's system-wide inflammation is high from processed foods, chronic stress, lack of sleep, your discs and spinal nerves are more reactive. Simple daily add-ons. Omega-3s, fatty fish, flax seeds, walnuts, lower pro-inflammatory cytokines. Turmeric/curcumin supplements can reduce low-grade spinal inflammation. Quality sleep, 7 to 8 hours, is when your discs rehydrate most efficiently. Even modest improvements here reduce your pain sensitivity and speed disc recovery. 7. The ultimate spinal insurance. How to lift anything safely. Even if you fix your sitting habits, your lower back is still vulnerable if you lift with a rounded spine. Golden rule: hips back first, hip hinge, then bend knees. Keep your chest slightly up, lift with legs and glutes. Brace your belly lightly. Never twist and lift simultaneously. That's a recipe for annulus tearing. Every time you pick up a laundry basket, your toddler, a grocery bag, it's another opportunity to protect your spine or stress it. Over a year, that's hundreds of thousands of micro-reps either feeding degeneration or building resilience. 8. Your mini back blueprint at a glance. Morning. Hydrate. 300 milliliters water with pinch of salt. Gentle standing stretch. Glute squeeze. Avoid deep bending first 30 minutes. Workday. 20-8-2 rule. Desk resets and hourly glute pulses. Twice daily hip flexor stretch. Evening. Short walk after dinner. 90 to 90 decompression before bed. Quality sleep, cool, dark room. Same schedule. 9. Final mindset shift. Tiny habits, massive results. Most people think fixing back pain means hours at the gym or seeing expensive specialists. The truth? It's small, repeated choices that shape the health of your discs, joints, and nerves. You now have a daily blueprint to reset your spine's pressure, keep your muscles engaged, reduce nerve sensitization, and actually hydrate your discs from the inside out. Do this consistently, and 6 to 12 months from now, your back will be completely different, not by magic, but by smart mechanics and biology. Try this plan for just 1 week and comment below. Which part of the blueprint was hardest for you to stick to? The hydration, the hip hinges, or the hourly glute work? Like this video if it gave you even one aha moment about your spine. Subscribe, because next we'll break down the 3 worst morning stretches that secretly make your discs worse, and the safe upgrades you can use instead. Your spine's future literally starts today, and it's just a few smarter habits away.